The creature sat in the center of the observation dome, its body shimmering with colors that shifted like oil on water. Dozens of alien species gathered around the transparent walls, watching with fascination. Some had scales, others had fur or crystalline skin. A few floated in specialized atmosphere tanks. But all of them looked at the small being with the same expression: wonder. The creature was called a Vix, and this particular one had a name that translated roughly to shimmer in human language. Shimmer was about the size of a house cat, though its shape changed depending on who was watching. Right now, with so many different species present, it held a neutral form, smooth and rounded, with soft edges that seemed designed not to frighten anyone. Nexus Prime was the largest trading station in this sector of the galaxy. Thousands of ships docked here every day, bringing goods and travelers from hundreds of worlds. The station sprawled across space like a metal flower, its petals made of docking bays and market districts. At its heart sat the sanctuary of universal peace, where rare creatures like Shimmer lived under careful protection. Dr. Kels stood near the observation dome, holding a data pad against his chest. He was Xanthari, which meant he looked somewhat like an upright salamander with deep blue skin and large, thoughtful eyes. He had been studying Shimmer for almost 3 years now, longer than anyone else. In that time, he had watched the Vix bond with 17 different species. "Remarkable," said the Aurelian diplomat beside him, her gaseous form swirling inside her containment suit. "I bonded with Shimmer myself last year. The experience was profound." Dr. Kels nodded, making notes on his data pad. "How long did Shimmer stay with you?" 23 days, the Aurelian replied. "Then one morning I woke and found it had gone. I felt the absence deeply, but I understood. That is the nature of the Vix. They are meant to be shared, not kept." This was the pattern Dr. Kels had documented over and over. Shimmer would approach a being who seemed to need companionship. The Vix would adapt its form to suit them, growing warm fur for species that valued touch, developing bioluminescent patterns for those who communicated through light, even adjusting its density for beings who lived in different gravities. The bond would deepen over days or weeks. Then, without warning, Shimmer would simply leave. It never stayed longer than 2 months with anyone. The doctor believed this was an evolutionary trait. In the wild, Vix moved between different species' territories, gaining protection wherever they went. No predator would harm a creature that brought comfort. No species would chase away a being that eased their stress and fear. By bonding temporarily with everyone, Vix ensured they were welcome everywhere. But there was something else in the data, something Dr. Kels was only beginning to understand. Each time Shimmer bonded, the neural patterns in its brain changed slightly. The connections grew stronger, deeper. It was as if the Vix was learning something with each encounter, searching for something it had not yet found. "Do you think it gets lonely?" asked a young Kreth student, her rocky form clicking as she moved closer to the glass. "Moving from person to person, never staying?" Dr. Kels considered the question carefully. "I think," he said slowly, "that Shimmer is doing what it was made to do. Whether that brings loneliness or satisfaction, I cannot say. The Vix do not speak in ways we fully understand." Inside the dome, Shimmer suddenly stood up. Its form rippled, and for a moment Dr. Kels could have sworn he saw something like sadness in its posture. Then the moment passed, and Shimmer returned to its peaceful stillness, waiting for the next being who would need its presence. The crowds eventually dispersed, moving on to other exhibits and attractions. Dr. Kels remained, watching Shimmer with the patience of someone who had spent years studying a single mystery. His people, the Xanthari, were known for their dedication to knowledge. They could focus on one question for decades without growing bored. "What are you looking for, little one?" he whispered to himself, knowing Shimmer could not hear him through the thick glass. "What would make you stay?" The Vix shifted its colors from blue to soft purple, then settled into a gentle silver glow. Dr. Kels had learned to read these changes like a language. Silver meant contentment or perhaps resignation. It was hard to tell the difference. A message flashed on his datapad. A new ship had just docked at Bay 17. The manifest listed it as the Celestial Wanderer, a human exploration vessel. Dr. Kels felt a spark of curiosity. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community. They had only developed faster-than-light travel a few decades ago, which made them infants by galactic standards. The other species had mixed feelings about humans. They were emotionally intense, often unpredictable, and they formed attachments with a fervor that many found puzzling. Where most species valued connections, humans seemed to crave them, as if companionship was as necessary to them as food or air. Dr. Kels had met a few humans before. He found them exhausting but fascinating. They asked endless questions and seemed incapable of accepting simple answers. They wanted to know not just what things were, but why they were and what they meant and how they felt about them. He wondered if any of the human crew would visit the sanctuary. It would be interesting to see how Shimmer reacted to them. In his notes, Dr. Kels had recorded Shimmer's bonds with 63 different species over the creature's 15-year lifespan. Humans would be number 64 if they came. Inside the dome, Shimmer suddenly lifted its head as if sensing something in the distance. Its colors brightened slightly, shifting toward a warm gold. Dr. Kels checked his instruments, but there was nothing unusual in the environment. No changes in temperature, air composition, or ambient noise. What do you sense? He murmured, making a note of the behavior. Shimmer held perfectly still for a moment longer, then relaxed back into its resting position. The gold faded to silver again. But Dr. Kels had seen something in that moment, something he had never observed before. For just a second, Shimmer had looked almost eager, as if anticipating something it had been waiting for. The doctor filed the observation in his notes, but thought little of it at the time. He had no way of knowing that in a few hours, everything he understood about Vix would change forever. He did not know that a young human with sad eyes and a heavy heart was walking through the station's corridors at that very moment, heading toward the sanctuary. He did not know that Shimmer was about to meet someone it would refuse to leave. The station's artificial sun began its slow descent toward evening mode, casting long shadows through the observation dome. Dr. Kels gathered his things, preparing to return to his quarters. Tomorrow he would check on Shimmer again, run the usual tests, and record the usual patterns. Tomorrow, he thought, would be like any other day. He had never been more wrong about anything in his life. Jake Morrison stood in the airlock of the Celestial Wanderer, waiting for the pressure to equalize. Through the small window he could see Nexus Prime stretching out in all directions, a massive structure of metal and light against the backdrop of stars. He had seen stations before, but nothing like this. This place was enormous, a city in space that housed millions of beings from across the galaxy. The airlock hissed open, and Jake stepped onto the docking platform. The air smelled different here, cleaner somehow, with a faint tang of something he could not identify. Alien. Everything here was alien, and after 3 years on exploration missions, that word still sent a small thrill through his chest. "Pretty impressive, right?" said Amy Parker, stepping up beside him. She was the ship's communications officer, a woman with short black hair and a smile that came easily. "Makes our stations back home look like tin cans." Jake nodded, shouldering his travel bag. "How long are we here again?" 2 months, Amy replied. "Captain wants to establish trade agreements and gather intelligence on regional politics. Apparently, this sector is heating up, and Earth wants to know what we are getting into." The rest of the crew filed out behind them, a group of 15 humans who looked small and out of place among the various aliens moving through the docking area. Jake saw a creature that looked like a walking tree, another that seemed to be made entirely of shifting sand, and something with too many legs that skittered across the ceiling. Nobody gave it a second glance. Just another day on Nexus Prime. Captain Lisa Grant gathered them together. She was a tall woman with gray hair tied back in a tight bun, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. "All right, people. We have 48 hours of shore leave before we start official duties. Stay out of trouble, respect local customs, and remember you represent Earth out here. If you are not sure about something, ask. The locals are used to new species stumbling around confused." Jake felt the weight in his chest grow heavier. Shore leave meant time to think, and thinking meant remembering things he would rather forget. 6 months ago, his younger brother had died in a shuttle accident during a routine supply run. One moment everything was fine. The next Danny was gone, just like that. No warning, no goodbye. Jake had requested the assignment to the Celestial Wanderer immediately after the funeral. He needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else. His family had not understood. They wanted him home, wanted him to grieve with them, but Jake could not do that. Being around people who knew Danny, who wanted to talk about him, who looked at Jake with pity in their eyes, it was too much. Out here among aliens and stars, he could pretend to be fine. You okay? Amy asked quietly as the group dispersed. Jake forced a smile. Yeah, just tired from the trip. She did not look convinced, but she let it go. Some of us are heading to the market district if you want to come. I heard they have food stalls with cuisine from 40 different worlds. Maybe later, Jake said. I think I will just walk around for a bit, get my bearings. Amy squeezed his shoulder and headed off with the others. Jake waited until they were out of sight, then started walking in the opposite direction. He did not have a destination in mind. He just needed to move to stay busy to keep the memories at bay. The station was a maze of corridors and open spaces, each area dedicated to different purposes. Jake passed through a district where holographic advertisements floated in the air, shouting in languages he did not understand. He saw shops selling clothing for body types he could not imagine, restaurants with atmosphere-controlled dining pods, and one storefront that appeared to be selling bottled emotions. After an hour of aimless wandering, Jake found himself in a quieter section of the station. The crowds had thinned, and the architecture changed from commercial to something more peaceful. Gardens grew in impossible places, plants from different worlds somehow thriving side by side. Water features made soft sounds, and the lighting was dimmer, more soothing. A sign caught his attention. Sanctuary of Universal Peace. Below it, in multiple languages including English, was a description. A place of calm where beings from all worlds can find comfort. Home to rare creatures dedicated to the well-being of all sentient life. Jake hesitated. He was not sure why the sign appealed to him, but something about the words comfort and well-being pulled at something deep inside. He had not felt either of those things in a long time. He walked through the entrance into a large open space filled with soft light. The sanctuary was beautiful, with living walls covered in bioluminescent moss and pools of crystal-clear water. Small groups of aliens moved quietly through the space, speaking in hushed tones. Some sat on benches, others floated or rested in specialized habitats. Jake wandered deeper into the sanctuary, drawn by curiosity and something else he could not name. He passed exhibits showing creatures that looked like living jewels, plants that sang when touched, and one pool where fish with transparent bodies drifted like ghosts. Then he saw the dome. It sat in the center of the sanctuary, a transparent sphere about 10 feet across. Inside, on a raised platform, was a creature unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was small, roughly the size of a cat, with a body that seemed to shift and shimmer like light on water. Its colors moved through blues and purples and silvers, never quite settling on one shade. Jake approached slowly, not wanting to startle it. A few other aliens stood around the dome, watching in silence. The creature, whatever it was, did not seem bothered by the attention. It simply existed in a state of calm stillness that Jake found strangely compelling. As he got closer, the creature suddenly lifted its head. Its form changed, the colors shifting toward warmer tones, gold and amber and soft orange. Jake stopped, unsure if he had done something wrong. But the creature did not seem alarmed. If anything, it seemed interested. Jake moved to stand directly in front of the dome. The creature watched him, and Jake had the uncanny sensation that it was seeing more than just his physical form. It was looking at him, really looking in a way that made him feel exposed and vulnerable. Then the creature did something that made several nearby aliens gasp. It stood up and walked to the edge of the platform, pressing itself against the transparent wall as if trying to get closer to Jake. Its colors intensified, becoming warmer and brighter. The shimmer of its body solidified slightly, taking on a texture that looked almost like fur. Jake reached out instinctively, placing his palm against the dome. The creature pressed against the other side, matching his gesture. Even through the barrier, Jake felt something, a warmth, a connection, a sensation of being understood in a way he had not experienced since Danny died. Extraordinary, said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see a blue-skinned alien holding a datapad. The being looked at him with large, intelligent eyes. I am Dr. Kels, the alien said in perfect English. I study the VIX. This one is called Shimmer. I have never seen it react to anyone so immediately. Is it safe? Jake asked, his hand still pressed against the dome. Safe? Dr. Kels looked surprised by the question. The VIX are among the gentlest creatures in the known galaxy. They exist to provide comfort. Shimmer wishes to bond with you, I think. Bond? Dr. Kells smiled, an expression that looked slightly odd on his salamander-like face. The Vix bond temporarily with beings who need companionship. It is their nature. They adapt to each individual, providing whatever form of comfort is needed. Would you like to meet Shimmer properly? Jake looked back at the creature. It was watching him with what seemed like hope, if such a thing could be read in an alien so different from anything he knew. Something in his chest loosened slightly, a tension he had been carrying for months. Yes, he said quietly. I would like that very much. Dr. Kells opened a small door at the base of the dome, and Shimmer immediately flowed out like liquid light. The creature moved across the floor with surprising speed, heading straight for Jake. Before he could think about what he was doing, Jake crouched down and held out his hand. Shimmer climbed onto his palm without hesitation. The creature was warm, warmer than Jake expected, and its texture had indeed changed to something like the softest fur imaginable. It weighed almost nothing. As it settled into his hand, Shimmer began to emit a soft hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate in harmony with Jake's heartbeat. Incredible, Dr. Kells murmured, making rapid notes on his datapad. The bonding usually takes at least an hour. Shimmer has never adapted so quickly. Jake lifted his hand closer to his face, studying the creature. Shimmer's colors had settled into warm golds and ambers, with occasional ripples of soft blue. Two large eyes had formed on what Jake assumed was the head, and they looked at him with unmistakable intelligence and warmth. What happens now? Jake asked. Now, if you are willing, you may host Shimmer for a time. The Vix will stay with you, providing companionship. When the bonding period ends, Shimmer will return to the sanctuary. Usually this takes between 1 and 8 weeks, and I just... Take it with me? Dr. Kells made a gesture that might have been a nod. Shimmer is not a possession. The Vix are sacred creatures protected by galactic law. You cannot own Shimmer, but you may be its companion for as long as it chooses to stay. You must treat it with respect and care, and you must return to the sanctuary every few days so I can monitor its health. Jake looked down at Shimmer, who had climbed up his arm and was now perched on his shoulder. The creature nestled against his neck, and the humming sound grew slightly louder. Jake felt something he had not felt in months, a sense of peace as if a jagged edge inside him had been smoothed over. Okay, Jake said, I can do that. Over the next few days, Jake learned that Shimmer was unlike any companion he had ever known. The creature seemed to understand him in ways that defied logic. When Jake woke from nightmares about Danny, nightmares where he watched the shuttle explode over and over, Shimmer was always there. The Vix would press against his chest, humming softly, and somehow the panic would fade. The grief remained, but it became bearable. Shimmer adapted constantly. In the morning, when Jake needed to wake up, the creature would brighten its colors and make cheerful chirping sounds. During meals, Shimmer would sit nearby, occasionally shifting patterns that seemed almost playful. At night, it would darken to deep blues and purples, becoming a soft weight that helped Jake feel less alone in the dark. But the most surprising thing was how Shimmer seemed to understand human communication. Jake found himself talking to the creature more and more, saying things he had not been able to say to anyone else. I miss him, Jake said one evening, sitting in his small quarters aboard the Celestial Wanderer. Shimmer was curled in his lap, pulsing gently with soft light. I know everyone says it gets easier, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like there's this hole in the world where Danny used to be and nothing fits right anymore. Shimmer lifted its head and looked at him. The creature's colors shifted through a complex pattern, blues and golds and soft greens that somehow conveyed sympathy and understanding. Then Shimmer did something it had never done before. It stood up on Jake's chest and pressed what might have been its forehead against his chin, holding perfectly still. Jake felt tears building in his eyes. He wrapped his hands gently around Shimmer, holding the creature close. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know if you understand, but thank you. The humming sound intensified for just a moment, and Jake could have sworn it sounded like Shimmer was saying, I understand. You are not alone. Amy noticed the change in Jake almost immediately. 3 weeks into his bonding with Shimmer, she cornered him in the ship's galley. Okay, what happened to you? What do you mean? Jake asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. You're smiling again. Real smiles. Not the fake ones you've been giving everyone for months. And you laughed yesterday. Actually laughed when Tony told that stupid joke about the Zenthari and the airlock. Jake glanced down at Shimmer, who was draped around his shoulders like a living scarf. I guess Shimmer has been good for me. Amy reached out slowly and Shimmer allowed her to touch its back. It's beautiful. I've heard about these creatures, but I've never seen one up close. They're supposed to move on after a few weeks, right? That's what Dr. Kell said. How much longer do you have? Jake felt his chest tighten. The thought of Shimmer leaving filled him with a dread he did not want to examine too closely. I don't know. Maybe another week or two. But the weeks passed and Shimmer showed no signs of preparing to leave. Dr. Kels met with Jake regularly at the sanctuary, running scans and tests on Shimmer. Each time the doctor's expression grew more puzzled. This is unprecedented, Dr. Kels said during the 5th week. Shimmer's neural patterns are unlike anything I have seen before. The bonding pathways in its brain are growing stronger, not weaker. Usually they begin to fade after the 4th week. Is something wrong? Jake asked, worried. Is Shimmer sick? No. Shimmer is in perfect health. In fact, I would say the Vix is thriving. But the pattern is wrong. By now, Shimmer should be showing signs of wanting to move on. Instead, it appears to be becoming more attached to you. Jake felt a surge of hope, followed immediately by guilt. He should want Shimmer to be free, to move on and bond with others. That was what the Vix were meant to do. But the selfish part of him, the lonely part that Shimmer had helped heal, wanted the creature to stay forever. What does this mean? Jake asked. Dr. Kels tilted his head. A gesture Jake had learned meant the Xanthari was thinking deeply. I am not certain. In all recorded history, no Vix has ever bonded with one individual for longer than 8 weeks. You are approaching 6 weeks now. If this continues, we may need to consider that something unusual is happening. That night, Jake lay in his bunk with Shimmer resting on his chest. The creature's colors were soft and peaceful, pulsing slowly in time with Jake's breathing. He thought about Danny, about how his brother had always been the one to keep pets growing up. Danny had loved every animal he met with the kind of pure, uncomplicated affection that Jake had always envied. I think Danny would have liked you, Jake whispered to Shimmer. He always said I needed to open up more, let people in. He said I kept everyone at arm's length. Maybe he was right. Shimmer's colors shifted, becoming warmer. The creature moved up to Jake's shoulder and pressed against his neck, humming softly. Jake felt the tension in his body ease, the constant ache of grief becoming something he could carry instead of something that crushed him. I don't want you to go, Jake admitted, his voice barely audible. I know that's selfish. I know you're supposed to help others too, but I don't want to say goodbye to someone else I care about. Shimmer went very still, then slowly, deliberately, the creature wrapped itself more tightly around Jake's neck in what could only be described as a hug. The humming sound changed, becoming deeper and more resonant. And in that moment, Jake understood something that Dr. Kels was only beginning to suspect. Shimmer did not want to leave either. The creature had found something in Jake. Some connection that went beyond the temporary bonds it had formed with dozens of other species. Whether it was the depth of human emotion, or Jake's specific need, or some combination of factors nobody yet understood, Shimmer had decided it belonged with him. And that decision was about to cause problems neither of them could have anticipated. The message came during breakfast. Captain Grant gathered the crew in the common area and announced that the Celestial Wanderer would be departing Nexus Prime in 1 week. Their diplomatic mission was complete, and Earth wanted them to explore the next system on their route. Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked down at Shimmer, who was resting in his lap, and the creature's colors flickered from peaceful gold to uncertain gray. Somehow Shimmer understood what the announcement meant. After the meeting, Jake found Dr. Kels at the sanctuary. The Xanthari was examining data when Jake approached, and he looked up with an expression that might have been sympathy. You have heard that your ship is leaving, Dr. Kels said. It was not a question. Yes, which means I need to return Shimmer to you. The words felt like glass in Jake's throat. Dr. Kels set down his datapad. I confess I am troubled by this situation. Shimmer has been with you for 6.5 weeks now. The bond shows no signs of weakening. In fact, my latest scan suggests it is still growing stronger. What does that mean? I do not know. But I believe we must attempt the separation while you are still here, so I can monitor Shimmer's well-being. If we wait until the day you leave, it may be more traumatic for you both. Jake nodded, though everything in him wanted to refuse. He looked down at Shimmer. who had climbed up to his shoulder and was pressing against his neck with unusual intensity. "When?" "Tomorrow," Dr. Kels said gently. "Come at morning cycle, bring Shimmer to the sanctuary, and we will make the transition as peaceful as possible." Jake spent the rest of the day with Shimmer, trying to memorize every detail. The exact shade of gold the creature turned when it was happy. The specific pattern of humming it made when Jake was sad. The way it wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet when he needed to use both hands. Every small gesture that had become woven into his daily life. Amy found him sitting alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. "You okay?" "I have to give Shimmer back tomorrow." Amy sat beside him. She had become one of his closest friends during the voyage. Someone who understood that sometimes people needed silence more than words. "That's hard. I knew it was coming. Dr. Kels told me from the start that Shimmer would leave eventually. But I thought—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "You thought it might choose to stay." Jake nodded. "Stupid, right?" "Not stupid. Human." Amy watched Shimmer, who had formed itself into a small ball in Jake's hands, pulsing with deep blue light. "We get attached. It's what we do. Sometimes that's a weakness, but sometimes it's the best thing about us." That night, Jake barely slept. Shimmer stayed pressed against his chest, and several times Jake felt moisture on his skin and realized the creature was responding to his tears. He had not cried since Danny's funeral. He had locked everything away, buried it deep where it could not hurt him. But now, facing another loss, the dam broke. "I'm sorry," Jake whispered. "I'm supposed to be strong for you, and I'm falling apart." Shimmer's colors shifted through complex patterns, and the humming grew louder. Jake had the distinct impression that the creature was trying to comfort him, telling him in its own way that crying was okay, that grief was natural, that being sad did not mean being weak. Morning came too quickly. Jake walked to the sanctuary with Shimmer clinging to his shoulder, the creature's colors dark and subdued. Other aliens gave them curious looks as they passed, but Jake ignored them all. This was private, this goodbye. It belonged only to him and Shimmer. Dr. Kels was waiting at the dome. He had prepared a soft resting area inside with plants and water and everything Shimmer might need. "Are you ready?" he asked. Jake wanted to say no. He wanted to turn around and walk away, to keep Shimmer and face whatever consequences came. But that would be selfish. Shimmer was not his to keep. The creature had a purpose, a role in the galaxy. Other beings needed what Shimmer could provide. "Yeah," Jake said, his voice rough. "I'm ready." He lifted Shimmer from his shoulder and held the creature in both hands. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything. You helped me when I didn't know how to help myself. I'll never forget you." Shimmer's colors flickered rapidly, cycling through every shade Jake had seen over the past 6 weeks. Gold for happiness, blue for sadness, green for peace, purple for contentment. It was like the creature was showing Jake a record of their time together, every emotion they had shared. Jake lowered Shimmer toward the entrance of the dome. The creature went completely still. Then suddenly Shimmer's form changed. It became almost rigid, clinging to Jake's hands with a strength the creature had never shown before. "It's okay," Jake said, though his voice cracked. "You have to go back. You have to help other people." But Shimmer did not let go. The creature's colors turned sharp red, a color Jake had never seen before. The humming sound became a high-pitched keen, distressed and frightened. Dr. Kels stepped forward, concerned. "This is unusual. Shimmer, it is time to return home." The creature made a sound that could only be described as a cry. It was piercing and desperate, and it made Jake's heart clench. Shimmer scrambled up his arms, wrapping around his neck and holding on with desperate intensity. "Maybe we should wait," Jake said. "Try again tomorrow." "Let me try something," Dr. Kels said. He reached out carefully, attempting to gently take Shimmer from Jake's shoulders. The moment his hands touched the creature, Shimmer emitted a shriek that echoed through the sanctuary. Aliens scattered, startled by the sound. The creature's entire body flashed bright red, and it clung to Jake so tightly that Jake could feel its small form trembling. Dr. Kels pulled his hands back immediately. "Stop. We must stop." Jake wrapped his hands protectively around Shimmer, feeling the creature's rapid heartbeat against his palm. "What's wrong with it?" "I do not know. In all my years studying Vix, I have never seen this behavior." Dr. Kels pulled out his datapad and began scanning Shimmer frantically. "The creature is in extreme distress. Its neural patterns are spiking. If we continue trying to separate you, we could cause serious harm. So what do we do? Dr. Kels looked troubled. I think we must allow Shimmer to calm down. Take the creature back to your quarters. Let it rest. We will try again tomorrow, perhaps with a different approach. Jake did not argue. He carefully carried Shimmer away from the sanctuary, feeling the creature gradually relax against him. By the time they reached his quarters, Shimmer had stopped trembling, but its colors remained darker than usual, streaked with gray and deep blue. It's okay, Jake murmured, sitting on his bunk. I've got you. You're safe. Shimmer pressed against his chest, and Jake felt a wetness that might have been tears. Could Vix cry? He had no idea. But if they could, Shimmer was crying now. Over the next 3 days, they tried 4 more times to separate Jake and Shimmer. Each attempt ended the same way, with Shimmer in distress, refusing to let go, making sounds that hurt to hear. Dr. Kels grew increasingly worried, not just about the failed bonding protocol, but about Shimmer's health. The creature is not eating properly, the doctor told Jake during their 5th attempt. Its bioluminescence is dimming. This level of stress is unsustainable. Then stop trying to separate us, Jake said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. I cannot. The celestial wanderer leaves in 3 days. Shimmer must remain on Nexus Prime. It is galactic law. Then change the law. Dr. Kels looked at Jake with his large, sad eyes. It is not that simple. The Vix are sacred creatures, protected by treaties that involve hundreds of worlds. If I allow you to take Shimmer, I would be breaking centuries of tradition. There would be consequences. And if you force Shimmer to stay, what then? Will the creature survive? The question hung in the air between them, heavy and unanswerable. Dr. Kels looked down at his datapad, at the data that told a story no one had expected. Shimmer was bonded to Jake in a way that seemed permanent, unbreakable. Separating them was not just causing distress, it might actually harm or kill the Vix. I must speak with the council, Dr. Kels said finally. This situation is beyond my authority. They must decide what happens next. Jake felt dread settle in his stomach. A council meant bureaucracy, debate, rules. It meant people who had never met Shimmer making decisions about its fate based on tradition rather than what the creature needed. How long will that take? Jake asked. I do not know. Days, perhaps weeks. We don't have weeks. My ship leaves in 3 days. Dr. Kels met his eyes. Then we must hope the council moves quickly. Because I fear that forcing Shimmer to stay will kill it. And I suspect that taking Shimmer away from you will do the same. Jake looked down at Shimmer, who had finally settled into a restless sleep in his arms. The creature's colors were muted, exhausted from days of stress. Jake made a decision then, one that surprised him with its clarity. If the council said Shimmer had to stay, and if that decision would harm the creature he had come to love, then Jake would break every rule necessary to keep Shimmer safe. Even if it meant becoming a fugitive, even if it meant never going home. Some bonds, he realized, were worth any price. The council chamber was nothing like Jake had imagined. He had expected something grand and intimidating, but instead he found himself in a circular room with soft lighting and comfortable seating, adapted for dozens of different body types. Representatives from various species sat in a ring around the center, where Jake stood holding Shimmer. The creature had not left his arms since the separation attempts began. Shimmer clung to him constantly now, and its colors remained dim and worried. Jake could feel its small heart beating rapidly against his chest. A tall being that looked like a collection of floating crystals spoke first, its voice chiming like bells. Human Jake Morrison, you stand before this council because you possess a Vix that refuses to complete its natural bonding cycle. This is unprecedented. We must understand why. Jake took a deep breath. With respect, I'm not possessing anyone. Shimmer has chosen to stay with me. I've tried to return it to the sanctuary, but every time we attempt separation, Shimmer becomes distressed. Dr. Kels can confirm this. Dr. Kels stood nearby, his datapad glowing with information. The human speaks truth. I have attempted separation 5 times under controlled conditions. Each attempt caused significant stress to the Vix. Its neural patterns show signs of trauma. I believe forcing separation could cause permanent harm. A representative from the Kreth species, her rocky body shifting with agitation, spoke up. This is unacceptable. The Vix are universal companions. They belong to all species, not to one individual. This human has corrupted the creature somehow. Corrupted? Jake felt anger rising. I haven't done anything except care for Shimmer. I didn't ask for this. I didn't force anything. Then why does the Vix refuse to leave you? Demanded another council member. This one a serpentine being with iridescent scales. In 15 years, this creature has bonded with dozens of species without issue. Then it meets one human and suddenly cannot function without him? You must have done something. Perhaps we should examine the human's psychology, suggested an Aurelian, her gaseous form swirling thoughtfully. Humans are known for their intense emotions. Maybe this one is somehow too much for the Vix to handle. Dr. Kell stepped forward. If I may, council members, I do not believe Jake is at fault. I have studied Vix for many years, and I am beginning to believe we have misunderstood their nature. Perhaps Shimmer has not been corrupted. Perhaps it has found something it has been searching for all along. The crystal being chimed sharply. Explain. The Vix bond temporarily with every species they encounter. We have always believed this is their natural state, moving from being to being, never staying. But what if that is not by choice? What if they have been searching for a species capable of forming the kind of deep, permanent bond they can return? That is speculation, the Kreth representative said dismissively. It is hypothesis based on data, Dr. Kels countered. Look at Shimmer's neural patterns. The bonding pathways are not temporary connections. They are permanent structures, similar to what we see in species that mate for life. This happened after Shimmer met Jake. The human did not force it. The Vix itself changed. The council members murmured among themselves in various languages. Jake held Shimmer closer, feeling the creature tremble. He wanted to say something to defend himself, to make them understand. But what could he say? That he loved this small being that had helped heal his grief? That the thought of losing Shimmer felt like losing Danny all over again? The crystal being spoke again. Human, you will undergo psychological evaluation. We must determine if you pose a risk to the Vix or if there is something about your species that affects these creatures in harmful ways. I'll do whatever you need, Jake said. I just want Shimmer to be okay. Over the next 2 days, Jake sat through endless tests. A neutral species evaluator, a being that looked like a wise owl but stood 7 feet tall, asked him questions about his childhood, his relationships, his grief over Danny's death. The evaluator recorded everything, showing no emotion, giving no indication of what it thought. Meanwhile, Shimmer's condition worsened. The creature barely ate. Its colors became dull and lifeless. When separated from Jake for even short periods during the evaluation, Shimmer would start that terrible keening sound that made everyone in the room flinch. Amy visited Jake in his quarters on the second night. She found him sitting on the floor, Shimmer curled in his lap, both of them looking exhausted. The crew is talking, Amy said, sitting beside him. Some of them think you should just smuggle Shimmer onto the ship and leave. Captain Grant would look the other way. Jake shook his head. I can't do that. It would make Earth look bad, break treaties, cause problems for everyone. One person doesn't matter that much. You matter to Shimmer, and you matter to those of us who care about you. Jake felt tears threatening again. I don't know what to do, Amy. They're going to make me leave Shimmer here. I can see it coming. They'll decide that one Vix and one human aren't important enough to change centuries of tradition, and Shimmer will... He couldn't finish the sentence. Amy put her hand on his shoulder. Then we fight. We make them see that this isn't about tradition. It's about two living beings who need each other. The next day, the evaluator presented its findings to the council. Jake stood in the center of the chamber again, Shimmer barely moving in his arms. The owl-like being spoke in a calm, measured voice. I have completed my analysis of human Jake Morrison. He shows no signs of psychological manipulation, coercion, or harmful intent. In fact, his emotional patterns suggest deep empathy and concern for others. But, prompted the crystal being. But humans bond differently than most species represented in this council. When humans form attachments, they integrate their loved ones into their sense of identity. The human's brother died 6 months ago. This created what might be called a wound in his psyche. The Vix has filled that wound, becoming part of how the human understands himself. The Kreth representative made a grinding sound. So the human is using the Vix as a replacement for his dead sibling? No, the evaluator said firmly. That is an oversimplification. Humans have an extraordinary capacity for permanent, unconditional attachment. They do not love by logic or strategy. They love wholly, with their entire being. When Jake Morrison bonded with Shimmer, he bonded in the way humans bond with their families. Completely. Irrevocably. And the VIX? Asked Dr. Kells. What of Shimmer's role in this? The evaluator turned its large eyes toward Shimmer. The VIX has responded in kind. For the first time in its recorded life, Shimmer has encountered a being capable of the depth of attachment it can return. The creature has not been corrupted. It has been completed. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt something shift in the atmosphere, a change from hostility to uncertainty. The Aurelian representative spoke thoughtfully. You are saying that humans and VIX are uniquely compatible? I am saying that humans possess an emotional capacity that allows for a different kind of bonding. Most species value connection, yes, but humans crave it at a fundamental level. They structure their lives around their relationships. They sacrifice for those they love without hesitation, for a creature like the VIX, which exists to provide comfort and connection. Encountering a species that loves so fiercely and permanently, it may have triggered an evolutionary response we have never seen before. Dr. Kells was making rapid notes, his excitement visible. This aligns with my data. Shimmer's brain has formed new structures since bonding with Jake. Permanent structures. The VIX has changed on a biological level. The question remains, the crystal being chimed. What do we do about it? We cannot simply hand over a sacred VIX to one human because they formed an unusual bond. What precedent does this set? Jake found his voice. I understand I'm nobody important. I'm just one person. But Shimmer is suffering. Look at it. He carefully turned so the council could see Shimmer's dull colors, its lethargic movement. Whatever you think about me, whatever you decide about humans, please consider what's best for Shimmer. If being with me keeps it healthy, and being without me causes harm, doesn't that matter? The Kreth representative stood. If we allow this, every human who visits Nexus Prime will try to take a VIX. They will claim special bonds, demand exceptions. We will lose these sacred creatures to a species that has been part of our community for barely 3 decades. Or, Amy said, stepping forward uninvited, you will discover that sometimes the right answer isn't found in traditions or rules. Sometimes it's found in recognizing when two beings need each other and having the wisdom to let them stay together. The council went into private deliberation. Jake was asked to wait outside with Shimmer. He sat on a bench in the corridor, the creature limp and weak in his arms. Dr. Kells sat beside him. Whatever they decide, the Zenthari said quietly, know that you have done nothing wrong. You loved a creature that needed love. There is no shame in that. If they make me leave Shimmer, it will kill it, Jake said. Yes, Dr. Kells agreed softly. I believe it will. After 2 hours, they were called back in. The crystal being spoke for the council. We have reached a decision. However, before we announce it, we wish to try one more thing. We will let Shimmer choose. Jake's heart raced. Choose? We will place the VIX in a neutral space with 2 options. Return to the... They prepared the chamber with careful precision. It was a large space, perfectly circular, with transparent walls so the council could observe. On one side, they recreated a portion of the sanctuary, Shimmer's original home. They brought in the platform where it used to rest, the bioluminescent plants it liked, even the small pool where it sometimes bathed. Several VIX companions from other species stood nearby, beings who had bonded with Shimmer in the past. They called out to it softly, welcoming it back. On the opposite side stood Jake. He was alone, no props or decorations. Just one human in a simple uniform, his hands empty, his face trying hard to stay neutral despite the fear in his eyes. In the center of the chamber, equidistant from both sides, the council placed a small platform. Shimmer would be set there and allowed to move freely in any direction. No one would call to it. No one would try to influence its decision. The VIX would choose purely by instinct and desire. Dr. Kells carried Shimmer into the chamber. The creature's colors were muted gray and blue, its form smaller than usual, as if it had shrunk into itself from stress. The doctor placed Shimmer gently on the platform, then stepped back and exited the chamber, sealing the door behind him. Shimmer sat perfectly still. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to call out to beg Shimmer to choose him, but he had agreed to silence. This had to be Shimmer's decision, pure and untainted by manipulation. If the creature chose the sanctuary, Jake would accept it. He would walk away and let Shimmer live the life it was meant to live, even if it broke something inside him that would never fully heal. Shimmer slowly turned its head, looking first toward the sanctuary, The other Vix companions called to it in their humming language. The familiar sights and sounds of home surrounded that side of the chamber. Safety, community, purpose. Then Shimmer turned to look at Jake. Their eyes met across the distance. Jake saw his own fear reflected in the creature's gaze. But he also saw something else: recognition, understanding, a bond that had nothing to do with biology or purpose and everything to do with choice. For what felt like an eternity, Shimmer did not move. Its colors flickered rapidly, cycling through dozens of shades. Jake recognized some of them from their time together. The gold of happiness, the blue of sadness, the soft green of peace. The creature was thinking, feeling, remembering. Jake realized he was holding his breath. Then Shimmer's colors brightened. The dull gray and blue sharpened into vivid amber and gold. The creature stood up, its form solidifying, its posture straightening, and without hesitation, without even a glance back at the sanctuary, Shimmer flowed across the floor directly toward Jake. The distance was perhaps 30 feet, but it felt infinite. Shimmer moved steadily, deliberately, never slowing or showing uncertainty. The creature's colors blazed brighter with every foot of distance covered, as if proximity to Jake was recharging its life force. Behind Jake, through the transparent wall, he heard gasps from the council members. Some sounded shocked, others outraged, a few almost reverent. Shimmer reached Jake's feet and immediately began climbing up his body. The creature moved with energy Jake had not seen in days, scrambling up his leg, his torso, his chest until it reached his shoulder. There, Shimmer wrapped itself around Jake's neck and pressed close, humming loudly. The sound was pure and joyful, unmistakable in its meaning. Home. This is home. Jake could not help himself. He wrapped his hands around Shimmer, holding the creature close. Tears streamed down his face, and he did not care who saw them. Shimmer's colors exploded into brilliant golds and warm oranges, pulsing with happiness. The creature felt warm and alive, so different from the limp, fading being it had been just moments before. Dr. Kels opened the chamber door. The choice has been made. Jake looked up at the council members watching from their observation area. Some looked angry, their faces or body language showing disapproval. Others seemed thoughtful, processing what they had witnessed. But several, including Dr. Kels and the owl-like evaluator, looked almost pleased. The crystal being's voice chimed through the chamber. We have seen the Vix's choice. However, this decision creates unprecedented complications. We must deliberate further. With respect, Jake said, his voice stronger now. Shimmer has made its choice clear. Forcing it to stay here would be cruel. You can see how much healthier it is just from being near me. Don't you have a responsibility to the Vix's well-being? We have a responsibility to all Vix, the Kreth representative snapped. Not just this one. If we allow this, what message does it send? It sends the message that you care more about individuals than traditions, Amy said from where she stood among the observers. Captain Grant stood beside her, and Jake was surprised to see that half his crew had shown up to watch the test. Isn't that what being civilized means? Recognizing when rules need to change to serve the beings they're meant to protect? The council members conferred in hushed tones. Jake stood in the center of the chamber holding Shimmer, trying to project confidence he did not quite feel. The creature had chosen him, yes. But would that be enough? Finally, the crystal being spoke again. We will take 1 day to reach a final decision. Jake Morrison, you may keep Shimmer during this time, but you must not leave the station. Your ship's departure has been delayed until we conclude this matter. Jake nodded. Thank you. As he left the chamber, his crewmates surrounded him. Amy hugged him carefully, mindful of Shimmer. Captain Grant put a firm hand on his shoulder. Good work, Lieutenant. That was brave. I didn't do anything, Jake said. Shimmer did all the hard part. No, the captain said. You let yourself care about something again after loss. That's the hardest thing anyone can do. Back in his quarters, Jake sat with Shimmer in his lap. The creature was still glowing brightly, its colors happy and content. It had eaten for the first time in days, consuming the special nutrient mixture Dr. Kels had provided. Now it rested, humming softly, completely at peace. You chose me, Jake whispered. Out of everything you could have chosen, you picked me. Shimmer lifted its head and looked at him. The creature's form shifted, developing features that looked remarkably like a smile. Then it did something it had never done before. Shimmer formed small appendages almost like arms and wrapped them around Jake's thumb in an unmistakable hug. Jake laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time he had laughed with pure joy? I love you too, little one. Dr. Kels visited that evening, bringing more food for Shimmer and a worried expression. The council is divided, he said quietly. Some members are convinced that allowing this will destroy the VIX's role in galactic society. Others believe we are witnessing an evolutionary moment that should be honored. Which side is winning? It is too close to tell. But Jake, you should know something. I have been reviewing historical data, looking at neural patterns from other VIX who have bonded with various species. I found anomalies, small changes that were dismissed or overlooked. What kind of changes? The beginning of permanent bonding pathways. They appeared in VIX who bonded with species known for strong emotional connections, the Aurelians, the singing forests of Pell, even some Kreth who mate for life. But in every case, the changes faded when the VIX moved on, as if the potential was there but never fully triggered. Jake thought about this. You're saying Shimmer isn't unique? I am saying that every VIX may have this potential, but humans are the first species capable of triggering it completely. Your capacity for permanent unconditional attachment matches what the VIX have been capable of all along. You are the missing piece. What does that mean for Shimmer and me? Dr. Kell smiled, his salamander features arranging themselves into an expression of warmth. It means that what you have is not an aberration. It is not a mistake or a corruption. It is an evolution, and whether the council likes it or not, they cannot undo what has already happened. Shimmer has changed. You have changed it, and it has changed you. That bond is real and permanent. That night, Jake lay in his bunk with Shimmer curled on his chest. He thought about Danny, about the hole his brother's death had left. Shimmer had not filled that hole. Nothing could replace Danny. But the creature had taught Jake that he could love again without betraying the memory of those he had lost. That his heart was big enough for both grief and joy. Whatever happens tomorrow, Jake whispered, thank you for choosing me. Thank you for showing me that I'm not broken. Shimmer's colors pulsed warmly and the humming sound grew softer, taking on an almost musical quality. Jake recognized it as the same rhythm Shimmer made when it was most content, most certain that everything was right in its world. In the morning, Jake returned to the council chamber. The Celestial Wanderer's crew came with him, a show of support that made his throat tight with emotion. Dr. Kels stood ready with his research data, and the owl-like evaluator had returned, requesting to make an additional statement, the crystal being called the session to order. We have deliberated extensively. This decision will set a precedent for all future interactions between humans and VIX. We must choose carefully. The evaluator spoke up. If I may, council members, I have one more observation to share. Last night The crystal being's voice chimed softly through the chamber. Before we announce our decision, Dr. Kels has requested to present new research findings. We will hear him. Dr. Kels stepped forward, his datapad glowing with complex neural maps and biological data. Thank you, council members. What I am about to share will change how we understand the VIX. He projected a holographic image into the center of the room. It showed Shimmer's brain structure, with bright pathways lighting up like rivers of electricity. This is Shimmer's current neural pattern. These pathways here, he indicated several brightly glowing areas, are permanent bonding structures. They formed after the creature bonded with Jake Morrison. Another image appeared beside the first. This is Shimmer's neural pattern from 7 weeks ago before meeting the human. Notice the pathways are present but dormant like seeds waiting to sprout. Every VIX has these structures, but in all our history we have never seen them activate. The Aurelian representative leaned forward, her gaseous form swirling with interest. What triggers the activation? That is what I have been researching, Dr. Kell said. I pulled data from every VIX bonding over the past century. I found that these dormant pathways showed small activations during bonds with certain species, always species known for deep emotional connections. But the activation never completed. The pathways would begin to grow, then fade when the VIX moved on. He pulled up another set of images, showing neural patterns from different VIX with different species. Here a VIX bonded with a singing forest entity. Small activation. Here with an Aurelian whose partner had died. Slightly larger activation. Here with a Kreth in their mating season. Even larger. The pattern is clear. The VIX respond to emotional intensity and capacity for permanent attachment. But humans, the evaluator said, understanding dawning in its large eyes. Humans exceed all those levels. Precisely, Dr. Kels agreed. Human emotional capacity is extraordinary. When they bond, they do not hold back. They do not bond cautiously or temporarily. They bond completely, integrating their loved ones into their very identity. For a Vix, encountering this level of absolute acceptance and permanent attachment triggers full activation of their bonding capacity. He showed a final image, Shimmer's brain compared to a human brain during attachment. Look at how similar the patterns are. When humans love, these areas light up. When Shimmer bonded with Jake, the exact same areas activated in its brain. They are experiencing the same thing, permanent unconditional attachment. The council members murmured among themselves. The Kreth representative stood, her rocky form shifting with agitation. You are saying that humans make the Vix bond permanently? That they force this change? No, Dr. Kels said firmly. The capacity was always there. Humans simply provide the right conditions for it to emerge. The Vix are not being forced. They are being allowed to become what they always had the potential to be. Captain Grant spoke up from where she stood with her crew. If I may add something from a human perspective, we do not see attachment as a weakness or a complication. We see it as our greatest strength. My crew is not just colleagues working together, they are family. When one of us hurts, we all hurt. When one succeeds, we all celebrate. That is how we survive the loneliness of space and the difficulty of exploration. She gestured to Jake, who stood holding Shimmer. Lieutenant Morrison lost his brother 6 months ago. That loss nearly destroyed him. But then he met Shimmer, and he did what humans do best. He opened his heart again despite the pain. He chose to love something, knowing that love always carries the risk of loss. That is courage. That is what makes us human. Amy stepped forward beside the captain, and Shimmer responded to that courage. The creature saw someone who was willing to love completely without reservation, and it chose to love back the same way. What you are calling an unprecedented problem, we call a miracle. The owl-like evaluator spoke again. I have studied human psychology extensively while evaluating Jake Morrison. What I found is that humans are unique in their approach to relationships. Most species form bonds based on mutual benefit or biological imperative. Humans form bonds based on something less tangible, what they call love. The evaluator's large eyes swept across the council. They love their children, yes, as most species do. But they also love their friends, their companions, their pets, even their possessions sometimes. They pour emotional energy into connections that serve no survival purpose. They adopt animals from other species and call them family. They cry over fictional characters in stories. They maintain relationships across vast distances and time, simply because they care. Inefficient, muttered the Kreth representative. Perhaps, the evaluator agreed, but also beautiful. And for a creature like the Vix, whose entire existence revolves around connection and companionship, encountering a species that loves so freely and permanently must be profound. Shimmer did not find a master or an owner. It found a family member. Dr. Kels nodded enthusiastically. Yes, exactly. And here is what is most important. This is not harmful to the Vix. Look at Shimmer's health data. He projected new images showing vital signs and biological markers. Before bonding with Jake, Shimmer was healthy but stable. After bonding, look at these improvements. Better immune response, higher energy levels, more complex neural activity. The permanent bond has not damaged the Vix, it has made it thrive. But what about the Vix's purpose? Demanded another council member, a serpentine being who had been quiet until now. The Vix exist to provide comfort to many beings. If they bond permanently with one, they cannot fulfill that role. Jake spoke up, his voice steady despite his nervousness. With respect, maybe that role was never right for them. Maybe we have been asking the Vix to do something that goes against their nature. They can bond temporarily, yes, but maybe they were always meant to bond permanently with someone who could match their capacity for love. He looked down at Shimmer, who was watching the proceedings with bright, attentive eyes. Shimmer has given me more than comfort. The creature has given me hope, companionship, and a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. That is not a small thing, and in return I have given Shimmer a home, not just a temporary stop on an endless journey. We both found what we needed. Dr. Kels added, I propose that we have been misunderstanding the Vix since we first encountered them. We saw creatures that could bond with anyone, and we assumed that meant they should bond with everyone. But what if their ability to bond with any species was not their purpose, but their search? What if they were looking for a species capable of giving them what they could give in return? Permanent, unconditional love. The crystal being was silent for a long moment, its facets catching and reflecting the light. Finally it spoke. These are profound observations. If what you say is true, Dr. Kels, then we have been failing the Vix for generations. We have been celebrating their loneliness and calling it sacred. Not loneliness, Dr. Kels said gently. Searching, and now one of them has found what it was searching for. The evaluator stepped forward. I recommend that the council not only allow Jake Morrison to keep Shimmer, but also establish new protocols for human-Vix interactions. We should study this bond, learn from it, and perhaps allow other Vix the chance to find permanent companions among humans if they choose. Absolutely not, the Kreth representative protested. Humans have been part of our community for mere decades. We cannot reshape centuries of tradition based on one unusual case. Why not? Captain Grant challenged. If the tradition is wrong, how long it has existed does not matter. You have evidence right in front of you that the Vix are capable of more than you believed. They are capable of happiness, of permanent bonds, of choosing their own paths. Denying them that because of tradition is not protection, it is control. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members agreed with the captain. Others defended the old ways. The debate raged for over an hour, with Jake standing in the middle holding Shimmer, feeling like his entire future hung in the balance. Finally, the crystal being called for silence. Enough, we will vote. Those in favor of allowing Jake Morrison to keep Shimmer and establishing new protocols for human-Vix bonding, indicate now. Lights appeared above several council members' seats, green for yes. Dr. Kels held his breath. Jake felt Shimmer press closer to his chest as if the creature could sense the importance of this moment. More green lights appeared, then more. The tally climbed, and Jake felt hope building in his chest like a rising sun. When the count was complete, the crystal being announced, the vote passes. By a margin of 63 to 42, the council has decided to honor Shimmer's choice and allow new protocols for human-Vix bonding. Jake's knees nearly buckled with relief. Shimmer's colors exploded into brilliant golds and oranges, the creature's joy visible to everyone in the chamber. The Celestial Wanderer's crew erupted in cheers, and even some of the council members who had voted yes seemed pleased by the outcome. However, the crystal being continued and the celebration quieted. This decision comes with conditions. Jake Morrison, you will be required to bring Shimmer for medical evaluations every 6 months. You must provide proof that the creature remains healthy and happy. And you must